Well, here's what we're working on right at the present moment. We ended up setting this hoist back on the frame of this truck. If you recall a couple of videos ago, we ended up getting everything all mounted up. We drilled the holes in the frame, got the hoist welded to the angle iron brackets that bolt to the truck frame. We pulled everything back off of the truck so that we could paint the frame. We've got a hydraulic oil reservoir on the other side of the truck that we're going to bolt back onto the frame. And then we've got some hydraulic hoses to hook up to the two cylinders that are on the hoist. We've got a pipe that hangs across the front part of the hoist that will work as a T. We've got a T to put in this on this pipe. And then our 3/4 inch supply line will go from the hoist up to the valve assembly. We've got a gear pump to put on PTO. That's how we're going to supply oil to the hoist. The original gear pump that was on this truck went with that other hoist. It had a little higher volume than what is needed for this hoist. That's about a 12 gallon a minute pump, a little bit smaller than what came off of this. So we'll get everything all in place, and then we'll get the silage box. That is parked down the road here. We've got to get some snow cleaned out of it. We'll get that off the trailer that it's on, and then we'll set that onto the truck. There's only 2 of us working today. Everybody is basically sick here. Jared's sick. Andrew's sick. It has gone through my whole family, and I'm the only one that hasn't got it yet. So I hope I get out of the woods without catching what they have had. Andrew tried doing chores this morning. He thought he was good enough for that, and he only made it about 45 minutes into cleaning barns, and he had to go back into the house. So we'll get things underway. We ended up taping off the tail hinge holes so that we didn't end up getting any paint in there. And I've got a piece of 2 3/4 inch cold roll that's going to act as the hinge pin. And then we've got some heavy wall DOM here that the box is going to pivot from. So we ended up doing pretty good with getting these old pins out. And then we've got a nice piece of material here sourced to be able to get right in there to act as a tail hinge. So that's what we'll work on here. This sand truck is in here. We've got a problem going on with that right now that we are hoping to get situated here the first of the week. But it's got a steering problem that ended up resulting in a power steering pump failure. And we're thinking maybe we've got a steer cylinder on this front axle that needs attention. So it's another Mensch problem that we so like to work on. So let's get this bolted up, and we'll show you what things look like when we get everything all fitted up here, and then we can get this silage box on there and then start the installation of forming up that tail hinge. Well, we are now ready to back this truck chassis in underneath this silage box. So what we have done, or what we have been working on, is we have been working on getting things buttoned up here so that we had minimal work to do once the box is on there. So what we're using is rubber to go in between the box and the truck frame. So how this rubber comes is it comes in like a T-style track system. So here's a piece right here. And they sell you channels to slide the rubber into. So I got this from J&J Body, and it come in 8-foot rubber lengths wrapped up in a box and 5-foot T-channels. We have gotten this from various places. This stuff probably seems to be the best stuff. However, it was a real mongrel to put together. What we ended up having to do is we ended up grinding the sides down here so that it would slide on there. We probably better get the box underneath that truck, or the truck underneath that box, shouldn't we, instead of gabbing on the camera. So Christian's been working with me today. You got any thoughts for today?
Always cut your rubber and then use any kind of rubber.
Okay. All right, so you think you know what you're doing there, Rubber Ronnie. All right, so we didn't show you the hydraulic reservoir, which we've got that on there. It's filled with oil. However, I lack a couple of fittings to hook the tailgate hoses to, which that's fine. We've got oil in the reservoir, and that part is done. The hoist is bolted down. The hoist is plumbed into the valve itself. So Nutty here, he'll get backed in underneath the box. We ended up removing the elbow pipe coming off of the muffler just so that we wouldn't have to screw around with that. He's coming in a little hot here. Boy, look, I think he's got her. I think he's got her. He's got to come ahead and move over. Move over. Spinning a little bit. All right. Hey. He's getting it. He's gonna get it. By golly, he's gonna get it. So I probably better set you guys down. That box is teetering a little bit with the wind blowing on her. Come back a little farther. Boy, he's done a pretty good job getting that. Whoa. Straighten your wheels. No, the other way. All right. A little farther back. All right, that's good right there. Let's let these down. Easy, easy, easy. Three more inches. Now we're scrubbing a little bit. Lock it in. Lock your diffs in. A little more. Get on the brakes at the same time. Whoa, right there. Let it go forward a little bit. Whoa, right there. I think that's pretty good. How are you satisfied with that gap? Is that what you want on it?
I suppose it'll do.
Yeah. And you can come back an inch. Easy, you bang up that cab. It's something you gotta live with. Whoa! That's good right there. All right, so we'll get this setting down on the chassis, and then we can very easily or very carefully put it inside. All right, let's get you down and inside. Go open up the door. Okay, so we'll back this inside, and then I can work on getting that tail hinge buttoned up. We've got to work on a couple of those things. We probably could have slid it back a little further, but we got 3 inches here, so 2.5, 3 inches. That is perfect. So we'll go ahead and get this inside, right, Bub? Well, Christian's just going to get this backed inside here, and I can go ahead and get the tail hinge formed up. We've got to square the box up a little bit on the truck frame. Get our pieces cut for the tail hinge, and this thing will slowly come together here tomorrow. warehouse.
Trailer's dropped. Truck is on the box.
Box is on the truck.
What you said.
Ah, boy.
Yeah.
After the fact. Put a little ludicrous on there. Is it going? Man, spray some movers on it. Dr. Pepper's, eh?
Dr. Pepper.
Yeah. We're right on it, buddy. We're right on it. So we'll mark this sun done. Sun done. Oh. Actually, cut it with that little surplus off. You want to cut it or you want me to cut it? You want me to cut it, right? Bingo. Alright, so you caught the tail end of the rubber and track install. We had a bear of a time at first trying to push that rubber down into them T-channels. Until we started grinding that inner lip down, then we got her, didn't we, buddy?
Sure did.
Yeah, so we're gonna clean up here. And then tomorrow, we're gonna roll into building this tail hinge out. The girls wired this here last spring. Got a lot of wire hanging around here for the lights, tail lights, markers and so on, but I gotta crawl underneath here and get the tail hinge built out, and then we can button this thing up. So we'll join up with you guys tomorrow. Okay, so we've got this box all setting into place. We've got it square with the truck frame. Now we're gonna start building out this tail hinge. So I have some material on the bench. I have a piece of 1 3/4 cold roll. That'll act as the pin, and then we've got some heavy DOM material. This is 1 3/4 ID. They did have some stuff that was 3/8 wall, but I wanted something a little thicker. This is 7/8 wall. It's a little heavier than we need, but it's something that Murphy and Nolan had in stock. So we're gonna cut this down. We're gonna get that fit in there with the pins, and then we'll bring over some flat plate, cut a U-shaped piece in the flat plate to fit down over that bushing material, or that piece of heavy wall tubing, and then we can weld to it and it'll act as an actual hinge point. So we'll get this cut down to size, we'll get that pin cut down to size, and we'll start rolling everything together here. Alright, we've got a interruption here now. We're gonna step away from this truck 9. We're actually gonna work on this sand truck. We had a steering problem on this the other day, And we ended up ruining the power steering pump that's on it. So we had one overnighted to us that just showed up. So we're gonna jump ship from that truck there to getting this power steering pump installed so that we can get this out of the shop. We do have some other things to do to this. We've got new sprockets to put on, new shaft on the drive end and on the rear end of this. So we'll go ahead and install this power steering pump. It has a steering problem to where the back axle wants to wander. They're thinking that maybe the steer cylinder on the front axle has a problem and it's allowing oil to bypass it, so on and so forth. So we're going to get this power steering pump on there. We do have a load on it. If we have to take that steering cylinder off of this front axle, we actually have to jack it up, pull the front axle out from underneath it. However, I did not want to do that with a load on it. The reason why there's a load on it is because it would steer fine when it was empty. So we'll go ahead and get this power steering pump installed. All right, we've got this pump on there, power steering pump. We're full of oil. Now we'll go ahead and back this outside and see how it responds to this new pump. We're thinking that it might have a steer cylinder that's a little weak, therefore it's wandering some. It has four-wheel steer. If you put it in two-wheel steer, it does fine. But when you have it in four-wheel steer, what it does is the back axle gets all cattywampus. However, the back axle doesn't wander at all when you're in two-wheel steer. So we're thinking that the cylinder on the back axle is fine. If there was something wrong with the cylinder on the back axle, the oil would seep from one side to the other, and it would allow the tires to just kind of turn on their own. So we'll go ahead and run this around the driveway some. We need to dump some sand off in this oil and get that cleaned up. All right, we dumped a little sand in that oil. Now, when prior to swapping this power steering pump out, this would not turn at high idle, sitting still. It didn't like it. Now it does. So this new power steering pump has got a little more ass to it. However, I'm not convinced that it has entirely fixed the problem. So we're going to watch in the mirror there as we enter the road. The other day what it was doing is we would just turn a little bit, yeah, and the front axle's not turned and the back axle has turned completely. So we're centered, both lights are on, so that means both axles are centered, and we just turn it ever so gracefully, and the front axle doesn't want to respond fast enough, then the back axle takes over. So there might be a packing loose on that, or so we're kind of thinking that there is a packing that is bad in that front axle, but we're not entirely sure. The steering valve will make somewhat of a snap noise in this cab, and I don't know what that means. We're kind of flying blind here. And it could be in the steering valve as well. Well, we'll go ahead and put this inside and they're gonna put bedding in tomorrow. They'll just have to use the front axle to steer with. However, yeah, I don't know what there is to it here. So we'll get this inside and we'll have to let them bed with it for a day here and go after this after they get bedding in with it tomorrow. Alright, so we ended up getting the sand truck out of here. And we've got number 14 in here. Getting brakes and tires. And we're pulling this turbo off. We've had some exhaust manifold gasket issues with it. What are you seeing so far? Anything? Is it where the manifolds come together, or do you think it's the exhaust manifold on the head that's leaking?
Definitely the exhaust manifold. It leaks here.
On against the head, or the halves or thirds or whatever that come together? Just against the head?
Yeah.
So we're going after this again. ISX Cummins. And we've been into it a few times. Brakes and tires, like I said. Tires aren't completely wore out, but we had 3 or 4 of them that were bad. We're gonna have 3 or 4 of them to mix and match and put in other places. So what we're doing here now is we're getting our tail hinge pieces ready to roll. I've got the DOM material that we're going to pivot from. I've got that cut down to size. I've got that setting in there. And then I've got our cold roll rods into the actual hinge ears that are on the tail hinge, or the end of the frame here on the truck. We've got the other piece over on the bench here. So we've got the 2 3/4 rod and then our bushing material. Now, I happened to read a comment from the video from when we put the hoist on this truck, and I had a clown say, Andy's so busy videoing, he didn't notice the chunk out of this tire. Oh my God, that is horrendous. You know what that's caused from there, buddy? That is caused from this tire scuffing the ground when it's not down. And this tire is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But I know you being an expert, you would say that you would never have that on your truck. Well, that is a superficial wound. That's really not going to hurt anything. Maybe this outer part might start to come off, but you know, it's a lift axle tire. But like you said, if it was on your truck, if you have a truck, you would go ahead and replace it. I guarantee you there are things wrong with your truck that you aren't even smart enough to know about. And as far as us having tire trouble, we don't see that much tire trouble. And when we do, we address it. We've got other tires that we're replacing here that are wore out. Other ones that aren't quite wore, but we're going to change them anyways. This is probably the worst tire that we've taken off of this truck. That's down there probably more than we should have taken it, but you know what, it still held wind, and we're going to get after it. Let me show you the brakes that we're replacing, because they're really not all that wore out either. This is a brake shoe. Maybe you don't even know what that's called. It's a brake shoe. It's got a fair amount of life left in it. Got a wheel seal gone here. We're going after that. Look at these shoes. Can you recognize them? They're not in that bad a shape, but we're replacing them anyways. It only costs about $800 or so to replace the brakes on this, and we're going to do it now. That pair of shoes, real good shape. That pair is not too bad. We've got a little bit of a groove in that drum. A little bit of a groove in that one, but we're throwing it all in the scrap pile. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this 3/4 inch material here, and we're going to cut out pieces to put on that tail hinge, and we're going to weld it into place, and you know what, it's going to work. So we'll show you what things look like once we get things marked out here. This was a drop piece of metal that I bought from the guys over to well, it used to be Klein. Alero's it's called now. So let's get to cutting stuff apart here, and we'll show you what things look like just before we glue it all together. Right, J-Balls?
I guess so.
Yeah. All right. Well, these guys have got some tires mounted up here. And Jared has this exhaust manifold off, and we'll show you what other problems he has found here. But most of them he has fixed already. So this exhaust manifold, we've been into it a few times. We've got it sitting on the bench, and I don't know if you guys can see that part of the manifold right here is not touching the bench. So he ended up ordering a new one. We could probably send this out to a machine shop, get it taken down and milled down to the point where it would work, but we don't have that kind of time. So he ordered a new one, and then while he was working on that, this cab mount was broke on this side, and it was down and crushed on some of these wires here. So he's fixing that. He's got some other cobbled up wires here that other guys have tied up and not tied them correctly. He's fixing those and getting them set up. He's over on this other side. There was a couple of wires that were chafed pretty good at the firewall. He's fixing those. So what we're doing is we're getting things put together for this tail hinge. And I've got my pins all set up. I've got some tabs made to weld onto that big large bushing that the box is going to pivot from. But we need to drill a hole in this pin. So we're using the Milwaukee mag drill. We'll get this set up. We'll tack weld the pin to the bench. That'll hold it into place. Then we're not trying to clamp it to the bench with a goofy clamp and having it move. So we'll just tack weld this and then drill the hole in it. Alright, we got a nice hole right through that and a 1/2 inch bolt. We'll go ahead and hold that pin into place. So now what we've got to do is we have to drill grease zerk holes into those large bushings. Well, we of course have an interruption, and the interruption is this defacer. And what we have going on is it slows down to the point where once you start digging with it, it doesn't want to dig nothing. So what we've done so far is we have taken the hoses off this left side to be able to just use the motor on the right, and it didn't want to turn, and it sounded like there was a lot of freewheeling going on this right hand side. So we're thinking maybe a keyway busted off or it did something to the motor. So now what we have to do is let just the left side run. If the left side runs, then we will definitely know that we've got something going on with that right hand side. You'll see the 4450 is in here, and that needs a starter, so they're going to get that on here as well once we get the defacer done. And then maybe I can get back to working on that tail hinge. What do you think there, Christian?
Might be able to.
You got any thoughts for today? Nothing right now? Christian's a little under the weather. He's sick. Jared's sick. The only one that hasn't been sick yet is me. How is that? Yeah. Oh boy. Well, typical fashion here. The inner fitting wants to turn. So we'll have to just put the wrench on there and squeeze it. Maybe you need a hammer. There we go. Leverage. Alright, so we'll cap that, try it, and it's looking like what we're going to have to do is tear that right side apart, but we want to be absolutely sure that that's what we have to do. So we'll go ahead and jump up in the loader. As soon as these guys give us the okay, we'll run that. Okay, they'll put the hoses in the bucket because we should have a little oil to return out of them. We'll start this girl up. And it of course runs with the left motor, turning it. So they'll have to get wiggled in here with the forklift and get that right side apart. Well, Christian Bob here, he got this taken apart. Jared helped him lift it off of there. So what there is on these motors, or on these drives, is there is a hex, no, it's not hex, square drive hub inside this drum. That square drive hub matches this square end, and this is spinning freely of the shaft. So it has more than likely spun the keyway off on the motor. So they'll get this, well, I should be able to spin that, might be able to spin that nut off by hand. Probably ought to have gloves on. Your hands are going to get all dirty. They're going to get stained. And we're going to have dirt on the light switches of the shop, all over the steering wheel. You're going to have dirt on your sandwiches. Let me see your hands. How do you keep them? I mean, they're dirty from this job, but they're relatively clean. You wash them too, don't you?
A few times.
Yeah, so you do a better job washing.
Yeah.
All right, spun the keyway off. So this shaft is shot, so we're gonna have to swap out that motor, because you could put another keyway in there, but it's probably not going to mucho last. So yeah, that's what they'll have to do. There's 4 bolts that hold the motor inside this bracket, drops out from the other way. They'll go ahead and put a new motor on it and get it into place. So who said it was a keyway to begin with? Was it you? Or was it the guy behind the camera?
I think.
That was just an easy guess. It could have been a, well, it's the keyway and it's the shaft. The shaft probably got egged out a little bit, and then what it was able to do is it was able to rock against that keyway and just ripped it out. So, see if you can get some of that crap spun out of there. And we've got to find a bolt for the bottom of that other side there. So, all right. Well, they ended up swapping out motors because of that shaft being wore out like it was. And then they're just gonna go ahead and put it right back together. So Christian has this cleaned out, and you can see the square drive that they have welded in the end of this drum assembly here. And I was gonna order some new teeth for this drum because they are wore out, but I think I'm just gonna order a whole new drum assembly itself. The farm shows this week. I could check with Ron to see if he actually has one. He probably doesn't have one with him. I should have got with him a little sooner, and he could have perhaps brought one with him, but he might have a spare one with him. And we would swap this out as this pipe is getting thin. So they'll go ahead and put this back into there, bolt it back up, and it'll be ready to go. All right, so they've got this all back together, and this is good to go. Yeah. So he'll go ahead and get this parked up, and yeah, get on with it here. All right. Well, we're just about ready to shut this video down. Jared's got the starter in, they've got the defacer on, and we have our pieces cut for this tail hinge. And when we get into the next video, we'll weld these in there. So I've got the pins cut at the length I need them, the pivoting material with a greaser hole drilled into them. Then I've got my tabs cut that we're going to weld underneath the sill on one side, and then we got a plate going up the other side that'll secure to the sill itself. So with that being said, that is going to do it for this video. I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll catch you at the next one.